Kia ora, I'm Pat, and this is Pat's Postcard, an audio postcard from wherever I am. And this is part 2 from our stay on the Molesworth Recreation Reserve on New Zealand's South Island. It's New Zealand's largest farm, managed by the Dept of Conservation, also known as DOC. We're here as volunteer wardens on the Acheron campsite. And this Pat's Postcard tells the story of a bit of New Zealand history. Andrew Dinsdale is the dock ranger at Molesworth, and I met him at the Acheron Accommodation and asked him to tell us about this wonderful old building.
So we're at the Acheron Accommodation house, which is the oldest building on the Molesworth estate. Built in 1862 to 1863, it was one of 7 accommodation houses from the Nelson area down through to the Canterbury plains. So it was used by drovers bringing merino sheep basically southeast from the Nelson district down to the Canterbury district. So this was one of those accommodation houses, the oldest on the Molesworth estate, and has been beautifully restored over the years by enthusiastic Cantabrians and, let me say, DOC as well. It's built out of cob. The accommodation houses were effectively a sublease of the leases to the station owners, and they were designed to provide for accommodation for the drovers. So the sublease required that you feed the drovers, you give them accommodation and a night's rest. So basically the food would have been mutton. You'd had to provide stabling for the horses, chaff, hay, and a bed for the night. Plus you could always supply them with good old whiskey, which kept them going. So it has been restored. We've had a lot of work done in 2019. A little bit of damage done in the 2016 earthquake, the Kaikoura earthquake, and we've had some cob replaced. So let's go in and
let's
have a
go
look.
in.
Yeah. So through the door into some of these rooms, they are pretty well original. We've done some major repair work following the Kaikoura earthquake in 2016. This work was done in 2019. So what we've done is replaced 2 internal cob walls by a local builder in Blenheim. So they're original cob, they're a cob replacement, but it's all from original materials off the station. So we've got tussock, a mixture of tussock, cattle dung, water, and a bit of lime, and that is the new cob walls, and they've held up really well. They look really good. Dried out beautifully, no cracking, so they're a great example of cob construction. And we've basically taken the opportunity to strengthen a few of the walls. The building is pretty well original. We've got the floor based on original river stones from the Clarence and the Acheron, with basically there's no foundations, there's just sawn timber on top of the river stones. We've got the original linings in this room showing, and at the fireplaces, the cob builds right up through the fireplaces. So this is, as I said earlier, was one of many, or one of 7 basically accommodation houses. They started up at the top house, which is just a little bit north of St Bernard. Still operating as an accommodation house. It's probably one of the few still operating. Nice to stay at, and it's got the smallest...
That's a great spot, isn't it, up there?
Great spot. It's got the smallest pub in New Zealand. Worth having a beer up there, and the hospitality is really good. So that's the top house. That was the first accommodation house. You drop down the Rainbow to the Rainbow, which became the Rainbow Homestead. Again, cob, and still there on the Rainbow Road. You drop down further south to the Tarndale Homestead, which is still on the Molesworth station, now used as an outstation for the accommodation of the musterers on Molesworth. And then you come down to the Acheron, which is one we're standing in now, the Acheron Accommodation House. They then drove the sheep out across Jolly's Pass, and their accommodation was the Jolly's Hotel, which unfortunately burnt down in 1911. There's a memorial at the bottom of Jolly's Pass to that. Out to the Waiao Hotel, and then finally the Huranui, which has been beautifully restored just recently to its glory, former glory. And it's absolutely a stunning hotel. You can still stay there and have a nice beer at the bar, and that's just been restored following the Kaikoura earthquake as well. So if you come through...
Yeah, let's go around the back.
Come around the back, and you've got these, got some internal walls here. Original lintels are all still here. Into the back of the kitchen. And out to the side we've got the safe. Well, where it was coolest, which most people would, who are a little older, a bit my age, would remember before the fridges in the 1950s.
Yeah.
Everything was safe with air circulating, kept the meat and milk and cheese and butter cool. So this is an original kitchen. It's had added, of course, over the years, an old stove, which is still here.
Yeah, it's
And
quite
I
an
think we can
impressive
get
range,
down,
isn't it?
and it's an Orion stove. So that is a South Island make. And you can see some of the original signage on it. So it's pretty original in here. And you can still see the earth, the cob backings really behind the stove. And you can see in the ceiling that we've got beech rafters with Molesworth tussock as the thatch. Obviously the building is now covered in corrugated iron to protect it.
But you've still got the tussock grass there.
Yeah, so the tussock grass is still there with the split beech and the beech rafters. So
Wow.
it's very original here.
Yeah.
And then we can go out to the back door. And you'll see that we've got an old bread oven out here, and that's been restored by Doc. So one of the things, of course, you do have to provide, as well as mutton, was fresh bread, and the musterers would take the bread with them on the next journey to the next accommodation house. But and out the very back we've got the stables where the horses were stabled, and the base of that is still original with the river stones on it.
Yeah.
Obviously now covered in corrugated iron, but the original stables in that shed with the original river stone. So pretty original around here. A lovely location, afternoon sun, and as you look out to basically the west, the due west, you can see that the orchards are still here.
We were eating gooseberries and red currants, weren't we?
Absolutely, and there's apples and there's cherries. So,
Oh.
so it's all here still over all those years from the mid to late 1800s. A favourite spot for campers and for those who want to make jam. One of the things you made everything edible with, particularly bread, was with jam. So the jam was a really important addition to the bread on the Molesworth, and particularly in these accommodation houses. So you had basically fruit trees everywhere.
It's a wonderful spot, isn't
It
it?
is a wonderful spot, and it's so original. It's a bit of history and it's a bit of New Zealand history, which, you know, if this had gone, thankfully it never did, you'd lose so much. So it's a lovely spot and it's worth visiting. And it's right on our doorsteps, really. I know it's a bit of a drive in from Hamner Springs, but it's only 45 minutes, and take it easy and you'll come to the most wonderful historical spot.
Thanks very much, Andrew.
Pleasure.
That was Andrew Dinsdale, Dock Ranger at Molesworth Station, describing a bit of New Zealand history, the Acheron Accommodation, part of the drovers' route between Nelson and Canterbury from the late 19th century. One of the things that we'll remember from our stay there is the parsnips. Self-seeded and growing everywhere, and amazingly surviving for well over 100 years. Molesworth is an amazing place to visit for the day or longer, staying at one of the campsites.